truck. It's the 3 bolt holes. Loose. See, the linkage is loose. The only thing really holding it there, looks like, is that exhaust manifold, which once push comes to start shove, it'll come out. So the next step now would be to start disconnecting the I-beams and the radius arms. So stay tuned. Okay, moving right along. Next step is disconnect the radius arm. Here's a rudimentary, I think that's the word, elementary, beginners, whatever. That's why I'm a gearhead and not an English major. A look at the front end of the I-beam suspension. Basically, right here, what you're looking at the top is your I-beam. It runs that way. Of course, this is your hub. So it goes your hub, your spindle, your kingpin is directly behind it. That's the top of the kingpin, and then your I-beam. Your radius arm is right there. Your radius arm mount is right there by the jack stand. You have the jack stand, of course, then you have that mount hanging down. That's your radius arm. Everything else, all the other rods and linkages that you see, is for your steering. This is your steering knuckle. That's the outer. This is a rear steer vehicle. These boards are. That's one of your tie rod ends. Little different setup. They have, it's like drag links going across. Same kind of thing. It's all about steering. What I'm going to do, instead of disconnecting the radius arm from right here, I think I'm going to disconnect it from back there, wedge it out, and then only thing I'll have left to do is disconnect my brake line, and then disconnect the actually that would be it, because the steering and everything is going to fall out once it's time. One thing to note, and this is something that I noticed, and I don't know if you guys could see it or not. Let me see if I can get the light in the optimal area. Right there, like I said, is that bump stop I was going to use for my center line, and I think that is still a good reference. But one thing to note, if you can zoom out here. Okay, I'm all the way zoomed out. See the I-beam, how it bends backwards? So anyway, this is the front of the truck. That right there is the other side's I-beam. Okay, so that's the passenger side's I-beam, and that's where it mounts. So on this I-beam, it does the same thing on the passenger side. The driver's side mounts on the passenger side, and the passenger side ends up mounting on the driver's side. That's its pivot point for the passenger side. But notice that bend right there. I have to assume that's a factory bend. The truck drove fine with no you know, uneven wear of the tires indicated or nothing. So I have to assume that is a factory bend. With that said, that center point, if I was to mark that as my center line for my wheels, doesn't quite add up because it kicks it back. Now, what a lot of these guys will do when they put these front suspensions in is they will mount their center center line of their axle slightly forward, because the way that the it's hard to get a full shot of this, but the way that the fender is, it swoops kind of at a backwards angle. So like right now, if I had this thing mounted or lowered, it almost seems like the wheel's tucked in further not further back, like it's too far back. Is what is an optical illusion, really. But that's why people will mount these wheels or the center lines like an inch or so forward. So with that said, I might still go ahead and use that mount or that bump stop as a center line point, and then just kind of play it by ear. It would be real easy to use that. In fact, in all honesty, I might take that bump stop off and leave that bracket in there, because that just gives it an extra place to weld to. Because where that front end sets, it'll set like right there where that hole is. So I've got all that room to get this to fit in here. And I'll have to show you, it'll make sense more whenever the time comes. Again, one of the things to think about if you're going to do this yourself, or I know there's a couple people that are talking about, like they've had one of these front ends and they've just kind of been putting it off, and now they've decided to kind of do it alongside of me at a slow pace, or do it immediately after, kind of to learn from my mistakes. But I really think I'm going to need to jack the front end up a little bit more. And I mean, looking at that jack stand, I could go up quite a bit more, so I'm not worried about that. It's just a matter of getting the jack under it and doing it. The reason I say that is because I'm not sure, and I've mentioned this in the other videos, I'm not sure I can get that front suspension, the new Jaguar clip, in between that leg, or whatever you want to call it, of that cherry picker in the frame. I did it, you know, ideally you want to keep this thing as low as you can, that way it's easier to finagle. But if you have access, maybe jack it up to where you're not bending your neck over or anything. Get your stuff unbolted, cut out, whatever you want to call it, then lower it down to an acceptable stance. Maybe even pull your front end up and under it, then lower it down. I don't have that ability to do so. I will have to raise it up, I'm sure, just to get the front end under it, and then we'll see. We'll kind of go from there. It'll be a wrestling match, that is for sure, especially with me doing it by myself. Just like I'm sure some of you guys are going to be doing it by yourself. One other thing to note, if you'll see, you'll notice, let's see if I can get this thing to set here. Okay. See behind the bump stop, there's your bump stop. See that tab right there? Focus. That tab right there. That tab mounts, it goes up, and it's got a hook. Right there's a hook. And that's the inside of the cross member. That hook, I guess it's to keep the front I-beams from traveling too far downward, like when you jack it up. Getting stuff in a bind or out of a line. It bolts right here. You can barely see the bolt right there. I'm going to try to leave that all together and maybe bend it or just use a pry bar and yank it out. Worst case scenario, I may just cut the thing out. I don't, you know, whatever. But we'll see. For the time being right now, I'm going to go ahead and get this radius arm loosened up, and might go on the other side and take that nut off the other side. So stay tuned. screaming like a monkey now, or a chimpanzee. For those of you guys who want to keep the factory suspension, and need to change radius arm bushings, welcome. This is what you get to do. And for those of you who got powerful air tools, you're very fortunate. Couple things that might have made this a little bit easier is had I sprayed this last night, let it soak all day. There goes the nut. There's your bushing. Merry Christmas. So once I get the I-beam loose, hopefully this side will be able to, well, I gotta get the shock off too, but that's not a big deal. But hopefully it'll be able to flop around. One down, one to go. Alright y'all, I'm calling it a night. See y'all tomorrow. We'll get back hot and heavy on this. Thanks for watching.